like most things. He did the same against Hillary. And, there were things he could have done to stand up against the party. And people, and I think people say that he wanted his seat on the committees in the Senate and all this sort of thing. And people say the same thing about AOC and the squad. They say they want their seats on the committees. They want their power. They think that they can change things from the inside. But over and over again, it's been proven. And how many times did Bernie have to run? I mean, the second time, I think you couldn't question anymore that there was a conspiracy against him in the Democratic Party, that he was not ever going to be the person who represented the Democrats in a national election.
I think that's right, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. They tried to trick at every primary, and finally, when the time was right, Obama stepped in the machine in South Carolina, and I mean, this is what happens.
Yeah.
There's no hope at the ballot box, none whatsoever, as long as you've got this two-party system. Now there's a party forming, the People's Party, which is a left kind of progressive party. But, let's see how much support they're able to get, whether they'll be co-opted by the Democratic Party. I mean, the Democratic Party seems to suck everything into itself.
Yeah. Like the Death Star.
Like the Death Star. Yes, it sucks everything into itself, and it manages to co-opt everything because it is the sole representative of the left, and yet it's extremely right-wing by the standards of any party in Europe. It is extremely right-wing. I mean, it's right-wing compared almost to the Tory. Well, literally, it's right-wing compared to the Tories.
I mean, everything in Europe, it's right-wing. I mean, apart from the national, or I don't even know how right-wing they are economically. I mean, I think certainly in terms of economic policy and the society they've set up, it's the most neoliberal. Let's put it that way. I mean, you can't deny that.
Absolutely. And people say, well, the neoliberals are better than the fascists. But I mean, in a sense, it depends on what your definition of fascism is. I mean, if you look at the Democratic Party today, you might well argue that if fascism is the fusion of the state and the corporations, then the Democratic Party is itself a fascist party.
I mean, I don't see any difference between the fascists. I mean, with this insurgency, these few people who broke into the thing, I mean, I don't see any difference between them. What would they instate? A fascist regime? How is it different from what presently exists? I mean, they just have one with Trump at the head and one with Biden. I mean, there's not like they're overthrowing any sort of democracy or any sort of working democracy for sure. So,
well, that's the thing. They keep trying to say that they're overthrowing a democracy, but the reality is when when Biden says this isn't us, this isn't who we are. Well, I mean, if you have to say that on such a regular basis, maybe you should start considering that is who you are.
Yeah.
And I think they very much are who they are in Washington.
Yeah.
If they weren't who they are, they would actually have been arresting more than 13 people.
Yeah. I think also, I mean, I think it's hard also to come to the fore in America because as well as sort of the carrot, as it were, like obviously Bernie wants committees and AOC and this and their careers and stuff. I mean, I happen to think that there's a scary element of a stick in America where if you become too popular for your beliefs that support what actually the people want, then you get whacked basically. Or you're put in prison and mysteriously killed. I mean, that's what they're saying they want to do to Assange now.
Well, they want to kill us.
They want to kill us. I mean, basically, if you do anything to threaten the status quo, then your life is at risk. I mean, you're in mortal danger. So I would be scared to become too prominent in the United States if I had any real following.
Well, I heard somebody who was trying to defend Obama said, do you think that when presidents get, I wish I could remember, I've got a very bad memory about this, but I heard this and it was very funny. They said, do you think when presidents get elected, they take them into a room and they show them the real Zapruder film, uncut?
Yeah.
And that's a warning.
Yeah, right? I mean, it just seemed that way.
Yeah, and I mean, you wouldn't believe it given how many, phony, stories around assassinations happened in America over all this time. But, I'm sure there's a fear factor, but I don't think that that's what affects the progressive junior members of Congress right now. I think what they're being co-opted by is, look, there's no alternative to us. You don't want the Republicans to be in charge. And I mean, even if it's not Trump, you don't want the Republicans to be in charge, so it's us or nothing. Mm-hmm. That's how they get bills passed. Yeah. I mean, the American people have got $1,800 for this entire year of no employment to cover all their expenses. That's it. No income support, nothing. $1,800 in direct checks. And this last one was for $600. People should have been getting a minimum of $2,000 a month in America to survive. And even then it would have been difficult.
Yeah.
There's no debt forgiveness in America. All the rent holidays that they had, 3 months they give you a rent holiday, and then at the end of it, you pay the 3 months rent.
Yeah.
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 People can't believe that this is actually the policy in the United States.
Well, there was money for some people, though, wasn't there? In the sense of the
trillions for people at the top.
Yeah. So
that's the only reason they got that's the only reason they got the original $1,200 checks passed, was because it meant that trillions would be going to the top, to the wealthiest, to the banks, to the corporations, so they could reinvest it in their stocks.
Yeah.
And give themselves more money as compensation. I mean, it's all they do. There's no investment in the real economy.
Yeah.
This money is all given to them to invest in themselves.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think the near future? I mean, we talk often about the long-term future, but what's going to happen? Do you think in the next month or so in the United States? Do you think there will be any incident at the inauguration? Do you think? What do you think in general?
I think it's, given how easy it was for this invasion to take place in the Capitol, I think it's very unlikely, unless they bring in the army to prevent people coming near the inauguration, which they may very well do.
Yeah.
And it would also, if they did that, it would also make it look like an extremely serious threat, which is what they want people to do. I mean, if they had armed military all around the perimeter of the place where they were doing the inauguration, it would actually make it feel like there was a very dangerous threat abroad.
Yeah.
But really, I guess if they did suppress it, all they would be suppressing really would be more of the same kind of disruption that's going on. And I mean, basically that's what it was. It was a disruption of a process of counting or validating the electoral college votes, which was sort of a last stand for people who wanted Trump to, or who believed that Trump was, deprived his victory.
Mm.
So, I mean, yes, the inauguration. I mean, there's not much you can do with the inauguration to stop it. So maybe it will be more a show of force to make people feel like there's a very serious threat out there, and maybe there won't really be much of a threat at all. It's very hard to predict. But I do think that there is one thing that, I don't know, some people that say may be true, which is that the people who have the guns and the people who are white and the people who are angry, they've always been there. They're not going to go away. Nothing is essentially going to change, as Biden has promised. So, I mean, the story of America rolls on. The white supremacy, the racism, the injustice, the violence. I mean, it's a violent society. Everyone in that room in Congress who had voted for those violent wars and the sanctions that kill hundreds of thousands of people, they're all murderers.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have a Congress, you have a government full of murderers, the most progressive members of Congress complicit in voting for all these things. You know what I mean? People talk about sanctions as if they're nothing. Mm. They are just war by other means. They kill millions of people, and a third of the world is under American sanctions now. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody pays attention to it. No. And the drone wars, it's a violent country. It's a white supremacist country. Most of the government are white and racist. Believe me, I'm sure they are. And, the injustice in America is shocking. And it isn't going away. And the people who invaded the Capitol yesterday aren't going away. And maybe they'll become less and less satisfied with what's going on. Maybe they'll become more and more, who knows, more and more inspired to sort of create this disruption, and they'll have more of these things. COVID-19 doesn't help. They tend to be anti-vaxxers. They tend to be people who don't wear masks. They tend to be people who believe that COVID is a government conspiracy. I mean, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's no pushback against them. It's still black people who are being put in jail for jaywalking, not them. Yeah. And yesterday proved that. And like I said, the most important lesson to take away from this was the reaction to those people as opposed to the people who went out on the streets to protest for Black Lives Matter in the summer. Yeah.
So, mentioned COVID-19, change of pace, as it were now, moving to a different subject, perhaps. So we're in Britain, we always have to say that, I feel. Um, new wave, essentially, over the Christmas period. We're in lockdown again. Uh, no, although to be honest, I mean, we've been in lockdown for the past 2 months. Seems will be the same for at least another 2, 3 months at the least. Um, I think now is a time in which we've had enough sort of history that people have been reviewing it. And earlier, my wife and I, we watched this thing by Owen Jones where he kind of made a summary of everything that's taken place in the past 9, 10 months and all the mistakes that Boris Johnson has made. And I think now is the kind of period of time where you can look back with some degree of hindsight and say, oh, a mistake was made here, a mistake was made there. But as I always say, hindsight is, of course, 2020. To what extent do you think that Boris Johnson and obviously the Conservative government, we assume he doesn't make all the decisions on his own, is responsible for the situation we have? And is it bad or good? Is it worse or better than the situation in other countries? Question mark.
I don't know how it is compares to the situation in other countries. It seems to me from what you read that the situation in other countries goes up and down in the same way as it does here.
Yeah, it does seem that
I mean,
way.
there has been a certain level of, obviously corruption with the Tory government in awarding like contracts to their friends that tend to come to nothing because these people haven't got any experience and the money goes down a black hole. And I think you had something interesting to say earlier, if you want to repeat it, about the various schemes.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the government, I feel like some, or at least most European countries have taken a more or less consistent approach, which is the sense that they had, a kind of societal approach saying, okay, we're going to close this now, we're going to lock down this now, we're going to keep track of what our health service can take and, relax a little bit here, relax a little bit there. This government, I feel, is always running from pillar to post and essentially just goes with the wind. One day Boris Johnson says, oh, we need a strict lockdown. The next he's like, no. So at first apparently it was herd immunity. That was his policy. Then he's now heavily criticized because he later went back on that and introduced lockdown anyway. And had only he introduced it a few weeks earlier, then he would have saved, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of lives. And what's the difference? They're just numbers. And I mean, people are always quantifying it in these terms. But I mean, yeah, of course it's better. Anyway, so he didn't it, then he went back on that. Then in the summertime we had this release, then he introduced lockdown again too late. And it's just been this kind of cycle, no consistency. But I feel in general with the Conservative government is that they're always looking for this like one-shot cure. Like, oh, we just have to really put a ton of money into this one thing and then that will solve the problem and we can all go back to our lives. So the first thing was this track and trace. This app was going to be everything. Wherever we go, we would have this app, we'd scan it. We wouldn't need any vaccine, we wouldn't need any cure, if there is one, and we wouldn't need to use the health service because this app would be so amazing and we just find the who has the thing and then everyone can isolate, everything perfect. But then, of course, that was the £1 billion, well, I guess billions of pound scheme. Nothing came of it. People, firstly, I mean, I think the owners or the restaurateurs didn't force everyone to scan the app in the first place. I think public confidence was practically zero. The app, on many occasions, didn't work. You'd scan it once, then it didn't have the ability to show the person you scanned it because the screen disappeared. I mean, there are a million technical problems with it. So obviously, and then now that's fallen by the wayside. No one even talks about it anymore. Nonetheless, it costs the taxpayer. I don't want to say the figure because I completely forgot it, but it was over £1 billion. That's for sure. People criticise Johnson. Oh yeah, that was the border thing. But then the other thing he did, and then he's like, okay, fine, that didn't work. The vaccine. That's what we